The car hurtled down the dark, desolate roads, its tires skimming the asphalt as if carrying the urgency of its passengers' lives. Inside, Zufishan sat pressed against Azar, her fingers clutching his shirt as though it were the only thing anchoring her to reality. The night air howled against the windows, and the countryside, bathed in muted moonlight, blurred into obscurity as they fled Alam Shah's clutches. The weight of the past few hours pressed heavily on Zufishan's chest. Had they really escaped? Could freedom be so close after so many months of fear and despair? Her heart raced, not from the thrill of escape but from the dread that Alam Shah's wrath was already in motion. Azar's arms wrapped around her, his voice low and soothing. "You're safe now," he whispered, though the sharp lines of tension on his face betrayed his own unease. His words were a balm to Zufishan's frayed nerves, but the storm inside her refused to calm. She lifted her face to meet his gaze, her eyes glassy with unshed tears. "He won't stop," she whispered, her voice trembling. "Azar, you know he won't stop. He'll come for us with everything he has." Azar's jaw tightened, his resolve hardening. He cupped her face with gentle but firm hands, his eyes burning with determination. "Let him come," he said, his voice filled with quiet strength. "I've lost you once, Zufishan. I won't let it happen again." His words were a promise, a vow stronger than any the world could shatter, but Zufishan's heart remained heavy. She turned her gaze back to the passing darkness outside, the vast open fields a stark reminder of the uncertainty ahead. From the driver's seat, Zufishan's brother interrupted their moment. "We can't go to the safe house," he said, his tone grim. "It's the first place they'll look. Alam Shah's men will have it surrounded by morning." Azar nodded without hesitation, his mind already working on alternatives. "Then we find somewhere else, somewhere he won't expect." The tension in the car was palpable, each second marked by the soft hum of the engine and the distant chirp of nocturnal creatures. Zufishan's brother took a sharp turn down a gravel road, the vehicle jolting as they left the main highway. Zufishan clutched Azar tighter, her breath catching in her throat. "Where are we going?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "To a farmhouse," her brother replied. "It's old, and it won't look like much, but it's safe. An old friend of mine owns it, someone I trust." After what felt like an eternity, the car slowed to a stop. The farmhouse loomed ahead, its silhouette bathed in moonlight. It was modest and weathered, its wooden walls bearing the marks of time and neglect. But to Zufishan, it was a sanctuary. The absence of grandeur, the simplicity of the place, stood in stark contrast to Alam Shah's gilded prison. As they stepped out of the car, the cool night air wrapped around them like a shroud. The faint scent of earth and wood filled Zufishan's senses, grounding her in the present moment. For the first time in months, she felt a sliver of freedom. The farmhouse door creaked as her brother pushed it open, revealing a dimly lit interior. A single lantern flickered on a small wooden table, casting soft, golden light across the room. The air inside was still, carrying the faint scent of dust and aged timber. Azar guided Zufishan to a small cot in the corner, his touch gentle. "You should rest," he said, his voice filled with concern. "You've been through so much tonight." Zufishan shook her head, her exhaustion evident but her fear stronger. "I can't sleep, Azar. Not when I know he's out there searching for us." Azar knelt before her, taking her trembling hands in his. "You don't have to carry this alone anymore," he said, his voice steady and reassuring. "We'll face him together, no matter what comes. I won't let anything happen to you." His words, so resolute, broke through the walls she had built around her heart. Tears spilled from her eyes, and she let herself collapse into his embrace. Months of fear, pain, and longing poured out in quiet sobs as Azar held her tightly, whispering words of comfort and love. Back at the mansion, Alam Shah's fury raged like a storm. His once imposing study was in ruins, furniture overturned and papers scattered across the floor. He paced like a predator, his movements sharp and deliberate, his mind consumed by thoughts of betrayal. "How could you let them escape?" he bellowed, his voice echoing through the room. His guards stood in a tense line, their heads bowed in fear. One of the men hesitated before speaking. "Sahib, the police created a diversion. We couldn't." Enough! Alam Shah's roar cut him off, the force of his anger silencing the room. His piercing gaze turned to his lieutenant. "I don't care what it takes," he hissed, his voice low and dangerous. "Find her. Bring her back to me alive or dead." The lieutenant nodded, his face pale but determined. "Yes, Sahib." As his men scattered, Alam Shah sank into his chair, his fists clenching the armrests. His mind raced with thoughts of vengeance. Zufishan, the woman he had fought so hard to possess, had chosen Azar. The betrayal burned deep, fueling his obsession. "She will regret this," he muttered to himself, his voice cold. "They both will." The following morning, sunlight streamed through the thin curtains of the farmhouse, bathing the modest room in a soft glow. Zufishan stirred, her eyes fluttering open to find Azar sitting beside her, his gaze tender and watchful. "Good morning," he said softly, a small smile tugging at his lips. Zufishan offered a faint smile in return. "Good morning." For a moment, the world outside ceased to exist. They shared quiet conversations, speaking of the future they had dreamed of but never dared to hope for. Zufishan found herself opening up to Azar, recounting the months she had spent under Alam Shah's control, the fear, the manipulation, and the small moments of rebellion that had kept her going. Azar listened intently, his hand never leaving hers. "You're stronger than you know, Zufishan," he said, his voice steady. "To survive what you did and still fight for us, that's courage." Her heart swelled at his words, a warmth spreading through her chest that she hadn't felt in months. For the first time, she allowed herself to imagine a future free of fear, a life built on love and hope. But their peace was fragile, and the shadows of Alam Shah's reach loomed ever closer.